Hello and welcome to the Car Auto Reviews channel, and welcome to the 2025 Subaru BRZ. And in today's video, we're going to do a proper technical review under the hood. Take a look underneath it, take a look inside. Now, some things we like, some things we do not like, right after this. Let's start our technical review under the hood. Now here you have one engine, two transmission options. Let's talk about them. So the engine is a joint venture between Toyota and Subaru. This is the FA24. Compared to the previous generation, there's a lot of good improvements here. Let's talk about them. So this is a 2.4 liter boxer engine. You do have, let's talk about some of its mechanical construction. Boxers are pretty interesting with their mechanical construction. So you have two valve covers. They're both plastic. Unlike the previous generation where it used to be aluminum, they are plastic now. You have a two-piece cylinder head and you have two of them. So you have the cylinder head itself, and then you have the cam cradle that sits on top of it. You do have two cams on each side. There's four cams. They're tiny little baby cams because there's only two cylinders on each side. So this engine does have dual variable valve timing. You do have 4 gears, 2 for each side. You do have 2 timing chains, 1 for each side. And then you have the world's largest front timing cover. Thing is massive. Just runs the entire length of the engine. This engine does not have hydraulic lifters, which is kind of a surprise. The way they do valve adjustments here, which this one does have manual valve adjustments, the setup is, it looks like it has hydraulic lifters, but instead what would be a hydraulic lifter is actually a fixed pivot. And then you have roller rockers, and then there's a little cap that sits on top of the valve. That is what they use to adjust the valve clearance. Different thicknesses of that cap will change the valve clearance. So this still has manual valve clearance. It's pretty interesting. Now the block in the FA24, unlike the FA20, service became very complicated because they didn't offset the bolts for the rod caps. So now you kind of have to disassemble the half to get the pistons out and whatnot. Kind of an interesting thing. I don't get why, but that's how they decided to do it. Now the cooling system in this engine is super simple. I mean, as simple as they come. Water pump all the way at the bottom. No fancy valves. You do have a thermostat, heater core. Very, very simple. The fuel system in this engine, unlike a lot of Subaru engines, this is Toyota's D4S, and this is, I feel like, the only contribution from Toyota to this engine. This has both direct and port injection at the same time. They can work either or together. You do have the high pressure fuel pump sitting on this side, pretty similar to other Subaru setups, except with the addition of the port injectors. Now, this engine, one of the biggest improvements over the FA20, this does have an oil cooler. That was something really needed, and you have it. I love the location of the filter right here. Oil cooler right underneath it, super simple. And another improvement they did, in the previous FA20, there was a problem. If you take it on a track, FA20, you take long turns, all the oil tends to pool on one side of the engine and kind of starve the engine a little bit. So the reason for that pooling was there was an open void in the valve covers, especially at the bottom side. They filled that void with a baffle. So now oil won't pool as much on this side. That is a pretty cool improvement. Now this engine, I do have to say one thing about it. It is on the sensitive side when it comes to service and especially sealer application. Sealer Subaru uses, God bless them, it's not fun to work with. Let's put it this way. That's one thing I wish they would have taken from Toyota. Their sealers are a little bit more friendly, not as much causing of clogs and whatnot. This is one thing about this engine you gotta be careful with. Now the transmission option, there's two. There is a manual transmission, and then there's a 6-speed optional transmission, automatic transmission. It's pretty cool that this optional, the automatic, like the good old days. So 6-speed transmission. I like the transmission itself. Really dislike the clutch feel. Not on a spirited or track use, but on a day-to-day driving. It's very aggressive, I feel like. It's not very friendly if you're just kind of winding down your day, driving normally. It's not the smoothest clutch on the planet. The automatic transmission, they did change a little bit of the logic, changed a few things with it from previous generation, but it is a pretty smooth 6-speed automatic transmission. Not the slowest transmission in the world, but not the fastest one either. Having said that, let's talk about some observations under the hood. I feel like if you've owned a previous generation, you've owned an FA20 or a Subaru, a modern Subaru, this will feel very familiar, except the fuel system, but that really doesn't add a lot of complication that you see. Everything, this is what I love about these cars, and I love about Subaru in general. Everything you see, feel, and touch is solid. There's no cheap, flimsy stuff. That is really welcome. The only problem I have with this engine is some of its service. For example, spark plugs. It's a little bit of a workout to get them out because of their location. And all this, I feel like they could have done the joint venture a little bit differently. There is a benefit to the engine being this way. It's kind of low and it doesn't hang up too much. The higher the weight is, the less handling characteristic you're going to get. But Boxers have their things. Service is one of them. Basic service, like replacing an alternator, is a 5-minute proposition. Oil change is very simple because they put the filter right here. Certain things become super simple, but then certain things become very complicated. Like anything you want to do, valve adjustment, engine's coming out. That's the problems with this engine. This is the limitation of a Boxer. Let's take a look underneath the 2025 Subaru BRZ. Before we get started, they are very identical, this and the Toyota 86. A few things in the back. So everything is covered in the front. You do have a steel cover here with a little opening for your drain plug. Really like this. This makes service very easy. Oil filter at the top. Over here in front suspension, you have a steel lower control arm with an integrated ball joint. You have a steel knuckle with a little bracket. So this particular edition, this is a TS edition here. I guess it's not an STI, missing the I, some reorganization. This is a Brembo caliper. Here's the interesting part. They didn't even bother label this one. It literally says Brembo on it. Nothing wrong with that, because majority of cars you'll see with this style caliper and bigger brakes, they are made by Brembo. They just asked Brembo to put their name on it. But this one didn't even bother. Steel front sway bar link, which is nice. McPherson strut setup. Suspension is super simple in this car, but it does handle very nice. Going back here, everything is covered. I do like that. This is very similar to the previous generation, actually, even the section of the exhaust. This particular one we're looking at is a manual transmission, 6-speed manual transmission. Like the transmission, dislike the clutch. That is one thing about them. They're not the best feeling. Same thing with the GR86. This is just how they made it. Going back here, I really like that everything is covered on the side. You do have a drive shaft with a center support bearing right here. Fuel tank is right here. It's a saddle fuel tank. Rear differential. I love this rear differential. It's a limited torsion, limited slip to rear differential. It's a steel differential. Kind of looks like a big bulky thing. They historically have not had issues with these. Very simple for service. Drain right here, fill right here, super simple. Here's something interesting. We even saw this on the 86 and the same thing on this one. This tape. I don't know what's the deal with this tape. They didn't remove it at the factory. It was not supposed to be removed, but this is a second car, so I'm going to call it. It's not supposed to be removed. Let's look at the rear suspension here. Multi-link rear suspension. You do have a steel knuckle. That is pretty cool. And again, you have Brembo caliper in the back and this TS edition here. Does not have electronic parking brakes. It's a little bit of an older design. You do have the brakes integrated in the rotor head. Works pretty good, very simple. Something interesting about this and the 86. They're exactly the same car, but not exactly. If you drive both of them back to back, you will notice a difference between the two. And one of those differences is the sway bar is different on the BRZ. Here's the interesting thing about how they feel driving-wise because of this different suspension tuning. I feel like this is the more mature car. This is the one that's really focused on being a better track car. The other one, it's more fun to drive. The tail will slide very easily on that one. It feels lively. This one feels planted and really ready to go. Now, these are not super serious track cars. They're fun track cars. They're not going to get you in serious trouble. But I feel like this one is slightly more serious if you're actually going to use it on the track a lot. The other one is more fun if you're occasionally going to use it on a track, but you're generally going to use it daily. That's the difference between them, and the suspension tuning is the only difference. Folks, everything else is reception and sway bar is exactly the same. They're identical. Let's take a look at the outside of the Subaru BRZ. Now, this is very similar to the GR86. Of course, they're the same car, except Subaru has a different front end. This is going to be heavily a matter of taste because the bottom part of the bumper is completely different. I'll leave a picture of the 86 right here. It is matter of taste. This one, to me, feels more mature, more serious. The other one is more playful and kind of, it just depends which one you like. The headlights, for the most part, they're similar. This one does say BRZ on it, so I think that was a pretty cool touch in red. The looks of this car hasn't changed for a bit. It is a good looking car compared to the previous one. I feel like this is more mature, more serious. It does look the part, and I really like how it looks. Look at the side here. I like the wheels here. They do match the specific color, which is kind of a Subaru special color. Love this color. You do have a vent right here that is actually functional, which I really like. The side profile, for the most part, is not, there's no brave designs or anything. The only thing I love about this is there's a little twist here that gives it this interesting angle. If you look at it this way, it just has a very interesting shape, this panel. I really like it. Then we have a little compliance flap here. Just don't worry about that part. The fuel door, though, that's a pretty interesting shape for a fuel door. It's I like this fuel door. It's pretty cool. It's the little stuff that we get excited about. And of course, you have a small car here. They just had to find their biggest shark fin antenna here to put it. Just looks completely off. Wish it was a little bit smaller, would have been nice. But here's another difference between this and the 86. See, in the 86 in the higher trims, you got the duck bill spoiler. Some will love it, some will dislike it. This one doesn't get it. You notice this car, its kind of philosophy is, this is more the serious, focused one. The other one is more playful one. And the spoiler will also tell you that. Then the badging. I feel like Subaru logo and Subaru right here is a bit much. But it's okay, we can live with that. BRZ TS. I don't know why this was not an STI. It does say STI in the gauge, but I guess they were not having a sale on the letter I, the manufacturer of that letter, so they just put TS. It's close enough. Let's look at the trunk here, because this is the cool thing about cars like this. They're fun. You can take them on a track and enjoy it. Not going to get you in serious trouble, but you can still use them. That's not a bad trunk for a car of this size. It's pretty narrow, the entrance, but it's usable for the most part. And I like, even though this is a sports car, it's super loud inside, not insulated at all, they still gave you something here, not just bare metal. Now, this particular one does not have a spare tire, although it looks like it has a perfect opening for a spare tire. That would be nice, but you do have a tire inflate kit. Yeah. Again, can't have everything, I suppose. Let's take a look at the interior of the Subaru BRZ. Now, the interior between this and the GR86 pretty similar. Let's start with some of the things. This is a manual transmission. I love the feel of the shifter itself. Don't like the feel of the clutch. I feel like in daily driving it's a bit on the aggressive side. Proper mechanical park and brake here, or hand brake. Let's take a look at the steering wheel, because it is a pretty simple steering wheel. I like that it's small. The controls are super simply laid out. You can't go wrong with a steering wheel like that. Now, the gauge is 2 screens. One of them is a smaller screen, just to display some of your temperature, pressure, whatnot. And the bigger screen shows the tachometer, shows the speed, shows some other information. In a car like this, I feel like they utilize this gauge pretty decently. I like it. Now, the infotainment system is starting to show its age, and it, for lack of a better word, feels like an aftermarket radio. Just the placement of it is strange. Doesn't have wireless Apple CarPlay, Android Auto. They are wired. Feels a little bit on the generic side for the most part, but it works in a car like this. the radio is not the top priority. You want how the car drives and feels. I like that the HVAC controls are physical. You have a lot of these really cool toggles here, the switches for your main controls of the HVAC control. One thing I dislike about this, you don't have really an armrest per se here or something, but you have this little storage compartment with the button that opens it right here. So as you're driving, especially in manual, you're gonna keep pushing this button with your elbow and it keeps opening, you keep closing it. That I feel like they could have done it better. Overall, this interior is not a bad interior. It's not the quietest interior in the planet. Actually, it's one of the loudest, but in a car like this, you expect it. I like the driving position. This is one of the things I really like about this car. Visibility is decent. Feels comfortable, even though the seats are heavily bolstered. It's not super uncomfortable. I guess, obviously, they're not the most comfortable seats in the planet, but for a sports car, they are pretty good. Driving wise though, this is something about the Subaru BRZ that was a surprise to me. It does drive a little bit different than the GR86. It feels more focused, like that it's not very tail happy as the GR86, although that equals more fun driving it. But this I feel like is the more serious one. Then there is the interesting stuff, the stuff that just... So this particular one we're looking at here is a TS trim. So I don't understand why every time you turn on the car and you shut it off, it says STI on the gauge, and you have STI always there, and then the start button says STI engine start stop. And then on the Toyota side with the GR86 it says GR, even though it was designed by Subaru. Why do they call it TS STI to begin with? I mean, that's a recognizable name and you already have the badges here. Why don't we just call it STI, not just TS? Don't know what happened there. And then I'm not even gonna pretend for a second to look at the back seat. There is a back seat for you to put your backpack or something. Yeah, it's not a very usable back seat. Let's put it this way. It's just there because, so you can put some items there, but I don't think you're gonna put any person there unless you want to kind of punish somebody, then put them in the back seat. That's the best way to say it. But in a car like this, you don't expect a usable back seat, and that's what you get. So, the Subaru BRZ. Folks, this one is a tough one, and the truth have to be said. This car is a joint venture between Toyota and Subaru. Before we go any further, let me translate that. Subaru made the car, Toyota donated the fuel system, and here we go. Let's just get that out of the way. Here's the interesting part to me. It almost feels like the other way around. Because when you go look at both these cars, they are slightly different. They're not exactly the same 100%. Maybe they are 99% the same. So the handling in this car is slightly different than the GR86. Something I'm a little surprised by. So I've never actually driven a BRZ. This was the first time I drive a BRZ. We've always looked at an 86, before that the FRS and whatnot. They do drive a little different. That's pretty interesting. This one feels kind of more planted, more focused, more let's go on a track and lay some serious times. Well, you won't, but you know what I mean. The GR86 feels like we're going to go on a track, have a big laugh, and then we're going to drive the car normally the rest of the day with a big laugh, basically having fun and enjoying our time. But that serious part of the BRZ comes at a cost, and a cost that doesn't even make sense. Because when you price out these two cars, the GR86 is actually cheaper than this. Not by a lot, but still, cheaper is cheaper. They're exactly the same car. And it doesn't even make sense because Subaru makes this car. So why do they cost more than the GR86? That's the first mystery. And folks have started to notice that part where this one is more expensive than the other one, because the sales number, at least of 2024, they say the whole story. GR86 selling a lot more than this. Then there's the next problem. This is for both of them. This is the fun rear-wheel drive, not super exuberant power numbers. It's just enough to put a big smile on your face, but it handles super well. It is a car that you can use every single day, and that is a cool part. But in Toyota land, you option this out to the max, where you get the Brembo brakes and whatnot. You're now in the territory, or very close to the territory, of a GR Corolla, which is a lot more usable than this, and in a performance sense, it's a lot more than this. Flat out, there is no even comparison. That's the first problem on the Toyota side. On the Subaru side, you option this out to the max. Now you are in the territory of the WRX, which is even more usable than the Toyota GR Corolla. It has more heritage. And yeah, that's the biggest problem. This worked at some point, but I feel like we're getting to the point where they need to do something drastic with the next generation, or this is simply going to disappear. And the Subaru one being more expensive than the Toyota one, which they are the same car, at least 99% the same, just doesn't make sense. I mean, we're going to look at this and we love it. Yes, it's great. And then folks logically will go buy the GR86, because the premise of this car is it's a fun two-door rear-wheel drive sports car that you can use every day and doesn't break the bank. Well, it manages to do everything, but that breaking the bank part is very important. The GR86 is doing a better job at that than this one, for an unknown reason to me. Folks, I hope this video was helpful and informative. I hope you learned something new. If you like it, consider giving it a thumbs up. If you're not a subscriber, consider subscribing to the channel. Check out some of my other videos. I'll throw the next video, folks. May the Lord bless you and keep you, and you have yourself a wonderful day.